الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد. Ubadah ibn Samit radiyallahu anhu, he mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam kharaja yukhbiru bilaylatil qadri, he came out to inform when Laylatul Qadr would be. فَتَلَاحَ رَجُلَانْ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, and two people from the Muslims fell into an argument, started to dispute. فقال إني خرجت لأخبركم بليلة القدر وإنه تلاحى فلان وفلان. I indeed had come out to inform you of when Laylatul Qadr would be, and this person and that person have fallen into, such and such a person have fallen into an argument. فَرُفِعَتْ, so it was raised. It was raised, meaning the Prophet ﷺ meant that the knowledge of when Laylatul Qadr would be has been raised, not that Laylatul Qadr itself, it was taken away from this ummah. Of course, the Laylatul Qadr is something which is a distinguishing characteristic, or it's something specific only which this ummah has been granted to. It was not granted to any ummah prior to this. So when the Prophet ﷺ said فَرُفِعَتْ, it was raised, it's referring to the knowledge of when Laylatul Qadr would be raised, and not the actual Laylatul Qadr, of course. وَعَسَىٰ أَن يَكُونَ خَيْرًا لَكُمْ, and perhaps that this could be better for you. إِلْتَمِسُوهَا فِي السَّبْعِ وَالتِّسْعِ وَالْخَمْسِ, seek it on the 27th night, on the 29th night, and on the 25th night. So in terms of, we learned several benefits. First of all, that this hadith is explaining, and it gives us the benefit and a lesson of the importance to recognize the consequences of argumentation, and that it's something which is censored, it's rebukable. At the end of the day, what happens is that it is, for example, a sin, or it is a mistake or a wrongdoing upon only perhaps individuals. In this case, it was only two. But the result was that an entire community from the Sahaba radiallahu anhu at that time, and all the Muslims who would come thereafter, were deprived of that knowledge to know when Laylatul Qadr would be. سبب العقوبة للعامة بذنب الخاصة. It's a means of deprivation of communities, of the general populace, because of the doing of a few. So similarly, we should understand that when we also argue, whether it's one of us or two of us or three of us, whatever it may be, a little small number, then it's just not those the results and the consequences of that dispute and that disagreement, just for the sake of dispute and argumentation, which is baseless, then that would be a result that there would be so many other actually communities, and so much of the broader community which exists and living now, and even perhaps in the future, could be deprived of. We also learn from this hadith that sinning, and specific in general and specifically of argumentation and dispute, is a cause لِخِفَاءِ بَعْضِ مَا يُحْتَاجُ إِلَيْهِ فِي الدِّينِ, is a cause of certain matters which are needed and we are in need of in our deen, that becomes hidden from us. So Laylatul Qadr, this knowledge, of course, it would have been so beneficial to know that when Laylatul Qadr would be, and the benefit we're therein, and so much emphasis. Is at the end of the day the best night of the entire year, and it's more worthy within almost 83 years of ibadah, etc. So every time أحدث الناس ذنوب, humanity commits sins, أوجب ذلك خفاء بعض أمور دينهم عليهم, then that is a cause of certain matters of their deen becoming hidden and concealed away from them. But then the Prophet ﷺ did say, وَعَسَىٰ يَكُونَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ, that perhaps that there is goodness, right? There is goodness for you within here. And khair meaning that there is this goodness that مَا يُقَرِّبُكُمْ إِلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى, that everything that can bring you closer to Allah. So the khair is that throughout Ramadan, and specifically the last 10 nights of Ramadan, that a person still seek Laylatul Qadr, because a person does not know which night it can be on, and therefore his reward will be greater and he'll be making more effort to acquire it. And that's where the khair is, that it's bringing a person closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as opposed to knowing when that night would be and only fixing that night, or identifying that night for Laylatul Qadr and making worship on Allah, worshipping Allah on that night, and leaving the rest, and because a person already would have that prior knowledge. So therefore as well, when there is an argumentation that takes place, or a dispute or a disagreement, and it's sometimes unintentional, or a person just is taken by surprise that a person had this dispute, but they are sincere in this regard. It's something which is of sincerity, and they don't have any grudges, and they are trying to work and find resolutions for that conflict or for that dispute. Then عَسَىٰ يَكُونَ خَيْرًا لَكُمْ, then this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had decreed. It's not a person that had asked for it or had taken the means to do this. Of course, a person should take all precautionary measures in terms of communication, in terms of approach, with wisdom and good counsel, etc., in trying to avoid any argumentation or dispute. But at the end of the day, if it's something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed, عَسَىٰ يَكُونَ خَيْرًا لَكُمْ, then perhaps it's going to be some goodness therein to learn the art or the skill of patience, of gratitude, of communication, to learn more knowledge, etc., to find ways and explore means of how to deal with issues and conflicts, so that when they rise or a person's consulted on it, that he would also be able to share what worked, their experience, and also certain insights which they would also be able to use for them to avoid those situations in the future. التمسوها في السبع والتسع والخمس, and the Prophet ﷺ then said that seek Laylatul Qadr in the 7th, in other words the 27th, the 29th, and the 25th. So this supports, of course, that opinion of our scholars that say that it's perhaps more preferred or more likely that Laylatul Qadr would be in the odd nights. That being said, though, there are not just one hadith on this mas'ala or this issue. There are a whole host of hadith. There are an abundant number of hadith which speak about Laylatul Qadr. And there are various reports which give sometimes the impression that it's on the odd nights, sometimes the impression that it's on the even nights. And then within the odd or the even, certain of the nights are mentioned. And that's why the approach of our scholars is the approach when there's what they call ikhtilaf al-hadith, when there are a hadith which are giving sort of conflicting reports, not basing it or not being consistent with identifying one night or one specific detail. Then the best way or the first way is to make practice upon all of them and reconciling between all of them. And that's exactly what our scholars have done, that they've reconciled between all the reports and have indicated that at the end of the day, the carried opinion, it would be, after the study of hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that it would be found in the last 10 nights. So therefore, let a person seek those nights. Many a time or many places, after the 27th night, it's usually the khatam of the Quran which as well takes place. So then there becomes a bit of a complacency or a relaxation, and Eid is very near. Of course, it's only a few days till Eid, but at the end of the day, this momentum and these last 10 nights, a person should and must still take advantage of these moments and these nights of Ramadan, and hope inshallah that a person would be able to receive that beautiful honor and that merit of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and reward of Laylatul Qadr, which is better than 1,000 nights of worship. By fasting the day or standing in the night which has no Laylatul Qadr, that's one night of what that single night of Laylatul Qadr worship is more worthy and valuable in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than 83 years of worship which does not have Laylatul Qadr. And then the Malaika, the angels, and Ruh and Jibreel alayhi salam, they descend on this night with every decreed matter. Salamun hiya hatta matla'il fajr, and they make salam. They spread the greeting of peace. They make salam upon every believer who is and they make upon every believer who is in the state of ibadah, so long as that they're not in the state of sin. And they also make ameen upon those who are making dua as well. And this is until the time of Fajr. We also learn from a Quranic verse speaking on this topic of the importance of unity and not falling into argumentation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the prescription that we have to hold close to our principles and our sources of knowledge. And that is وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ, that obey Allah and obey His Messenger. So that's the first most important matter in order for a person to live in harmony, to have peaceful and peaceful relationships and harmony amongst us. وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا, and do not fall into dispute, do not fall into argumentation. So let a person at all costs avoid those circumstances, those situations, because what will happen? فَتَفْشَلُوا, lest you become weakened, وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ, and your strength depart you, and the wind of your strength depart you, this wind of victory which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised the believers, then that will depart the community, that will depart the ummah. وَاصْبِرُوا, let a person be patient. But Allah ta'ala says, وَاصْبِرُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ, that be patient upon the command of Allah, be patient upon and refrain from the prohibition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and upon aqdarillah, the situations and those matters which Allah decrees a person finds himself in. Inna Allah ma'as sabirin, indeed Allah ta'ala is with those who exercise patience. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite the community's heart. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite our efforts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us a true reflection of one ummah, one single body, which expresses the joy of others and also feels the pains of others as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite us in that which He loves and is pleased with. And may Allah ta'ala allow us to take advantage of what remains in Ramadan. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.